Hello, folks. Thank you for taking part in our session today. We're excited to be here speaking about all things documents and workflows. My name is Nick Adams, and I work here at PDFTron on the marketing team. I'll be the one communicating with you in the chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen throughout the webinar. Aaron will try and answer as many questions as he can throughout the session, but we'll also have a designated Q&A period at the end, so please submit your questions in the questions tab. Don't worry if your question isn't answered right now. We'll be following up with you after the session as well. And for joining today, you're automatically entered into a draw for one of 5 in-depth tech consultations with Aaron and his team, and we'll be following up with the winners of that after the webinar as well. On with the show, our speaker today is Aaron Gravesdale. Aaron is the head of solution engineering here at PDFTron with more than 15 years experience developing and architecting solutions in document management and PDF technologies. Aaron helps customers achieve their goals with PDFTron tech from startups all the way to Fortune 500. Aaron, thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks so much, Nick. Great. So, and yeah, thanks everyone for attending here today. So basically, what I'm going to do is first talk about some of the new features within Webviewer. Just kind of jump into that to give people a sense of what's coming up in our release, which we have slated for later this month or early next month. What I'll do then is just kind of go into a bit of a technology overview in general regarding Webviewer. And I think Nick is going to post a poll. So, if there are any features that you'd like particular focus on, or, something you'd like to see more than some other feature, please do feel free to fill out that poll, and you can use that as a way of sort of guiding the session. And then after kind of, reviewing some of those different features, what I was going to do is go into a bit of a question and answer period. So, if you have any additional questions or areas you'd like to see more, then we can explore that here on the webinar. And this webinar will be recorded, so there will be a recording link that's sent out afterwards. So first, what I'm going to do is just kind of go over, as I said, new features that are upcoming in the 8.0 release of Webviewer, which we're hoping to have out later this month. And this is actually something you can try out yourself. So all I did was go to pdftron.com. And if I go to /nightly, then here what I can do is get access to the nightly builds that we make on a daily basis. So effectively with our technology, as we're checking in code either to the stable branch or the more experimental branch, in either case, what we're doing is making builds of those available right away. The stable branch is made up of builds that we consider suitable for production usage. So that way, if our team makes a fix to some bit of functionality that is considered something that would not destabilize any production usage, then we throw it into that stable branch, and therefore you can start enjoying that feature right away. And then in terms of our experimental code, these are new features that we're developing, or changes that are not yet quite production ready. And so the builds that we're readying for release later this month are in that experimental branch. So all I did was go down to just the very latest ones built last night, and I've deployed those locally. So I'm showing that in this tab here, so it's running here on my local machine. And that's something that, if you wanted to download this build and get it set up in your environment, it's very easy. Just a couple of npm commands to get this up and running, and getting these demos here available just to try out for yourself. And so there are quite a few different interesting features that I kind of wanted to delve into here. I think the first one would be the form builder that we now have built into Webviewer. So we used to kind of have the capabilities of adding form fields, but not really built into the UI. So here in this sample, we've got some built-in things over here that would let you create a new form field. But I actually don't need to use any of that now with this latest version. What I can do is go into sort of a forms mode here, and what we can see here is that I've got a lot of new annotation tools that I can use to build in forms here on the page. So for example, if I wanted to add a text field, it's very similar to drawing like a free text annotation here on the page. So I can add in a new field. We see here that there's a new dialog where I can fill in the form name and a default value, adding in flags and things like that. And then after I click Apply Fields, you can see that I'm able to go in and fill that out, contact, or whatever bit of information I'd like to add into there. And in addition to text fields, we have support for really, a lot of the other field types that we have built into PDF, like checkboxes or, radio button choices, drop-down fields as well. So, for example, if I wanted to have a few different options, option 1 and option 2. It's very easy to immediately start providing that to end users. So this is really a helpful workflow, especially when we're talking about, we're working with scanned or faxed forms that might have been fillable PDFs at one point, but, through being kind of flattened into an image are no longer natively, digital. So, we no longer have these fillable form fields, if we have like a scanned document. So that's a lot of the motivation for adding this in directly. Makes it a lot easier to, for example, have a signing workflow as part of that as well. Just being able to add in an actual signature field for users to fill out makes it a lot more intuitive for them to have some kind of signing process here on the document. In addition to that, some of the other upcoming features are the rotations of stamped, free text, rectangle, and ellipsis annotations. So we now have the ability to just draw those shapes, and then on top of them we have built-in rotation capabilities here. So we have this handle, and we can rotate any of these annotations. So we're trying to make this kind of default functionality for all of our annotations, as many as possible. Also in the next version will be the ability to directly load doc, PPT, and XLS documents. Currently, our Office support is limited to DocX, PPTX, and XLSX. So this next release will sort of expand out to those additional file types, the kind of pre-OpenXML versions of Office documents. So since a lot of existing documents are in that sort of older Office format, that really opens up the set of documents that you can view in Webviewer purely client-side without having to convert anything server-side. And we'll go into more detail on that a bit later in this demo. Another sort of interesting feature that I can show off in this demo is our Office template filing. This is something you might have seen in a demo of ours on our site, but essentially what we can do is enable you to load up a template created in DocX, and here within the browser, here entirely sandbox in the client-side browser, replace these tags with other information. So here we have, for each of these tags in here, we'll have particular bits of text, or in some cases images that we want to place into the document. Here, for example, we're reading from a file that we have locally inside of the Webviewer installation, just a PNG, and we can add that in as well. So if I hit submit query here, what's happening is our code is going through and replacing all of those fields inside of the Office document with the actual concrete values, and then we can download this as a PDF. So it's sort of similar to mail merge or report generation processes that you might be familiar with. But the nice thing and the advantage of this approach inside of Webviewer is that it's entirely self-contained within the browser. So you don't have to have any sort of server-side component here. And additionally, one big advantage is that we're going off of Office documents instead of PDFs. So a lot of the issues that one can run into when editing text on PDFs, due to just sort of some limitations of the format, those are things that are kind of eliminated in this implementation. So definitely, if you have to have a workflow where you're generating new documents or performing mail merge or similar operations, recommend checking this out. So let's see. In addition to that, we'll have the ability to modify outlines and bookmarks built directly into the viewer, as well as a toolbar for filling and signing scanned documents. So again, if you'd like to try this out, just to get more of an experience of what the next release will be like, I'd recommend downloading one of the nightly builds and trying it out locally. So just checking the poll to see if I have any answers there yet. There was a question on with the template generation on whether there's a way for users to edit the contents of the doc file within the viewer. And so we don't have interactive editing of Word files within Webviewer. So that's something that you could do outside of the viewer in say, Office or another application that does support interactive editing of Office files. So I think at this point it would make sense to jump directly into the Webviewer demo itself. So what I'm going to do here is basically bring up our Webviewer demo that we have hosted on our site. So you can actually get to this yourself and try it out on your own through this documentation menu. So we go to Documentation, Web, and Launch Demo. That will bring up the Webviewer demo here, and with a variety of different samples kind of showing off the functionality within Webviewer. But I just wanted to take a moment and back up and kind of show off some other things that are inside of this menu as well. So if we go to Documentation, Web, and Overview, that actually brings you to our guides and enables you to download Webviewer for yourself, along with detailed instructions on how to integrate that into whatever sort of framework you might have. So whether that's React or Electron or Vue, whatever hosting environment you're with, say like Salesforce or SharePoint. We're compatible with all of these frameworks and integrations. So please do feel free to download it and try it out. We actually make the full production build available for you to download and test. The only limitation of running that build in demo mode prior to licensing is that you would see a watermark sometimes on output. So here inside of the viewer, what we're looking at is our web viewing technology that we've developed actually over the past couple of decades. So initially what PDFTron offered was a native toolkit called PDFTron SDK, and we actually still offer that toolkit. You can download it here from our site for a variety of platforms. Originally it was for Windows, but then we ported it to other platforms like Linux and Mac OS, and then mobile platforms as well, like iOS and Android, and UWP as well. And so initially, a lot of the functionality was around low-level processing of PDFs, but over the years we've added functionality for really the entire document lifecycle. So whether it's document creation, either by generating PDF documents from scratch or by converting from other formats, that includes functionality around improving documents, like maybe merging different PDFs together or splitting pages out, performing OCR on documents, adding form fields, or watermarks or page numbers onto documents. That includes also the sort of everyday usage of documents. So interactively viewing them, as we maybe saw a taste of with our Webviewer demo, doing things like adding annotations, interactively searching through documents, form filling and signing documents. And then we have a lot of functionality around the end stage of the document lifecycle as well. So that might include doing something like adding a certification or sort of notary signature onto a document, adding watermarks or passwords and encryption, doing things like converting to PDF-A, which is an archiving format, or redacting personally identifying information so that a document can be disseminated to a wider audience. All of that is built into our toolkit and is available cross-platform because we have sort of a single code base that we've ported to these all of these different platforms. And what we've done with Webviewer is take that exact same code base and transpile it over to JavaScript. So that way we can take that same gamut of functionality for the full document lifecycle, from document creation to document improvement to document usage to the end stages of the document lifecycle. And all of that is available on the web as well. So it's not simply just a viewing technology, but also is much more advanced, and it is very similar to having a full-featured PDF or document processing toolkit here inside of your browser. something that can be integrated directly into whatever larger solution you might have where you might need to show or process documents. So just when it comes to showing documents here, that's what we can see here in this sort of default sample that we've loaded up inside of Webviewer. So currently we have a 90% zoom, but I'm going to do fit width here just to see zoomed in a bit more. And you'll notice that the document text here is rendered at the actual zoom level that we've gone to in the page here. So how that's working is that JavaScript code inside of the browser is downloading bytes of a PDF document and then rendering it here entirely inside of the browser. It's not doing something like going off to a server and having that server convert a PDF into an image and then show the image here inside of the browser. And the reason why is that it's much more usable if we perform that kind of functionality directly here on the client-side machine. For one thing, it makes the entire solution a lot more scalable because we're not just offloading that hard work of converting PDFs to images. We're not just making a server do that. Rather, we're doing this client-side. And so the scalability of the solution is greatly increased because as we add new users, we're essentially adding more computing horsepower to the solution. We're not just sort of making one single server or a group of servers do all of this work. Rather, it's naturally scaling. As we add more users into our system, we're adding also that client-side horsepower to be able to render these documents. So, as we add new users or add new documents into the system, we're not taxing it more. And so it's able to scale up much more elegantly as a result. Another big advantage of putting a lot of this work client-side is that it tends to be much more performant as well. So, for example, we can zoom very far into this document and still have it be rendered accurately and very quickly as well. And another thing is that we can support very large files too. So here in our examples, we have documents that are thousands of pages. This one is 13,000 pages. And so we can open it up and see the contents right away. So we'll have to jump around inside of the file as well. And even being able to jump to arbitrary pages, we're able to see them very quickly. And additionally, that holds for large files in terms of bytes as well. So here in our demo files, we have this 2 GB document. We can load that up. Essentially pretty quickly. We're not having to download the entire file here into the browser's memory. Rather, we're able to take advantage of some optimizations and just grab the first few pages and render them here right away in the browser. And can still jump around kind of randomly inside of the document and still be able to see content just as if we were dealing with a much smaller document. And as well, the way that we've structured our rendering makes it so that the browser here keeps a memory footprint size that's constant, even though we have these very large documents. It's able to be nice and conservative about the amount of RAM that it's taking up. Now, in addition to PDF documents, we have a lot of other file types that we can view inside of Webviewer as well. So, PDFs are what a lot of our customers come to us for. But we also have built-in support for Office as well. As you recall from earlier, I was mentioning that in addition to the types like DocX, PPTX, and XLSX, in our next version, we're adding support for Doc, PPT, and XLS. And this rendering and conversion that we do is actually happening client-side. So what we can do inside of Webviewer is point to a URL that might have a docx file and download that and directly be able to view that here inside of Webviewer. And we can see that it's still searchable, annotatable content here inside of the browser. So I could still do something like search for the word is and see the different locations in the document where that appears. Notice that our searching actually returns kind of the surrounding text as well. So this is called the ambient text, and it's something that makes it a lot easier for end users to determine where exactly that search hit is being found, especially in larger documents. They can get more of a sense of the overall context in which text might be occurring. Here also we have a couple of options for case sensitivity and whole word searching, like you might be used to in Windows search or other environments. But we also have support for regular expression searching as well. So I think that was a question from earlier on whether OCR supports regular expression searching, and that is something that we do have support for with any of our text-based content here inside of the viewer. Now, in addition to Office file types, we can also load up images directly here in the browser. We support, a variety of image types, including TIFF, and actually including multi-page TIFF as well. So if you have a lot of TIFFs in your environment or multi-page ones, maybe that's sort of the standard for storing your documents, that's something that we can support directly in the browser. And our toolkit also has the ability to convert documents into images also. So if you wanted to keep a workflow that was entirely image-based, maybe where you have multi-page TIFFs on a server, you bring them into Webviewer for users to view or annotate these documents. And then if you wanted to save the modified copies back out as multi-page TIFF, that's something that's supportable within our viewer as well. And we do have support for CAD files. We have a module that can run server-side, converting various CAD file types into PDF, which you could then show inside of Webviewer here. So once we've actually started viewing a document here in Webviewer, as I mentioned, there are quite a few different operations that we can do. And again, it's very similar to native desktop software. So for example, we have searching capabilities and of course, annotation capabilities as well. So here, I can draw shapes on the document or, make markups on top of text. And when I've done so, here inside of the viewer, there's an actual sort of commenting thread that's created around this annotation. So here we see that what we've done is automatically extracted that text and used it to populate a comment. But someone else could come in here and make a note as well. So say, for example, let's review. And what you're doing then is creating an entire conversation anchored to a particular place on the document. So if different users are collaborating together to review, maybe some text on a document or just make sure that a document is ready for the next stage of your workflow, this is a very useful way for them to be able to collaborate at the same time, in real time, on the same document. We actually have some annotation permissions that make this a bit more manageable as well. So, for example, like an ordinary user can come in here and make an annotation on the document. And we can see that we're able to assign a given username here to this annotation. And we can actually persist that when we persist these annotations and broadcast them to other users, whether that's through embedding these annotations into the document itself or taking them in XML form and sending them to other browsers. So here inside of this annotation permission sample, we can see that, so Sally has made a highlight here. And Sally could actually do things like call out to other users. So for example, let's say that Sally wanted Justin to review this markup that Sally's made. Sally could say, Sally could use an @ a call out for a given user. So just typing an @ Sally's given a list of different users in the system. This is something that's actually entirely customizable within Webviewer. So you can choose, which users might show up with these @ mentions, and you can also control how users are notified when @ mentions are made within the comments. So Sally could say @ Justin, could you review, and post that onto this comment thread here. And then since that's entirely under your control, exactly how Justin is modified and notified of this mention, you could hook this into whatever notification system you'd like. So it could be something like maybe sending Justin an email saying, Sally asked you to review this. But it could be also something within, say, like a back-end workflow system. If you have something like that set up, maybe like a list of tasks for each user, something like this could actually go and and using your code, go and add a task into your system so that Justin is immediately notified of something that someone else would like him to do. And then here in this comment thread, in addition to that, Justin could actually go in and set a state for this conversation. So we have some built-in annotation states like accepted or rejected. And these are just ones that are specified by the PDF specification. So that's why we have them as default. But within Webviewer, we have APIs for going in and customizing these. So, whatever kind of workflow users go through in this process, you could actually encode that into these annotation states. And since it's possible to customize any of our annotations and make new annotations that are tailored for your users, you could actually encode user workflow directly inside of these annotation states and have users kind of guide themselves through whatever process you'd like them to follow when reviewing content within Webviewer here. So, for example, Justin could come in and make a reply to this comment thread. So Justin could say, it's on Sally. Looks good, and post that in the conversation. And then Justin could come in and say, accepted on this proposal here that Sally's making. Could we review this content? Justin is saying, let's drive forward with that. Now, Justin, in this sample here, is set up as an administrative user. And what that means is that Justin can come in here and modify the annotations of other users. So Justin can come in here and do things like, change the selected text here that Sally made. Most of the time, one can't do that. So if one is just logging in as an administrative user in Webviewer, then one can modify one's own annotations, but not those of others. And then we also have support for read-only users as well. So if you want to have maybe external users who are able to come in and review the activity on a document, but not actually make any modifications, that's all supported as well. And the way this is driven is just through JavaScript code that you would run after instantiating Webviewer within the client-side browser here. So the code to instantiate Webviewer is shown in this code snippet. And then what we're doing is we're just, in order to assign a username, we're just saying set annotation user and giving it a string. And then that's the string that we're using when making these annotations. And we can also say things like whether the user is read-only or not, or whether they're an administrator or not. So here with Justin, we've said set is admin user true. And again, this all just happens within the client-side browser here. We're not controlling how these users are logging into the system or how users are managed or anything like that. What we do is we try to leave that as open-ended as possible so that you can integrate with whatever authentication or user management system you wish. That's sort of the general design philosophy of Webviewer. We want this toolkit to be integratable into as many frameworks and as many platforms as possible. So we try to place as few restrictions as possible regarding how you deploy or what systems you might integrate with. And that holds for document management as well. So with Webviewer, we're able to load documents in quite a few different ways. So for example, I think all of the examples we're showing here are where we're loading the document through a URL. But we can also load it from a local environment. So if I wanted to upload a document into Webviewer, that's possible. And then here in our guides, we have quite a few different ways of loading up the document. For example, it could be streamed down as base64 data or as a blob. And then we can load that directly within the viewer. That's usually a bit less memory performant, but allows us to integrate with lots of systems that don't necessarily provide a URL to open documents with. And additionally, if you're running inside of Salesforce, then we have guides on how exactly to load up documents from within a Salesforce environment. And then when it comes to saving documents, we can save that through our download button. So if I were to go into here and click download, then I'd be able to save a local copy of the document with these annotations merged in. And additionally, I could save the document inside of the browser as well. We have support for just saving to essentially a blob, which I could then post to a REST API in order to persist that server side. That said, you don't actually have to save an entire new copy of the PDF every time it's modified. If you want to persist these annotations here, you don't have to actually duplicate the document. Rather, we have the ability to keep those annotations separate from the underlying document and keep the underlying document essentially read-only. So that's sort of what we're showing here in this diagram. We can have the PDF content that's read-only, and then all of our annotation and form field information can be saved into an XML format called XFDF. And Webviewer is able to read each and can merge those into the document at runtime. And additionally, when these annotations are changed somehow, then there's an event that Webviewer raises. And at that point, we can save off that change however you'd like. So that could be saved off to maybe a backend server, or it could be propagated out to other users. And that's how actually our real-time collaboration is constructed. So the idea is that, whenever a user modifies an annotation or fills out a form field or something like that, we can save that XML off and then broadcast that out to other browsers. And in order to make that a little easier to set up, we've built out a collaboration platform that's really very plug and play. And that can enable you to save annotations as XML into a database of yours. So what this is just a couple of node modules that you can set up in your environment, and that way you can integrate within your database and save annotations there, and bootstrap this ability for users to collaborate with each other in real time on top of the same document. So I'm just going to look through some questions here just to maybe start getting some answers to the questions that people have posed. So let's see. So one question is, do you have document content search if the documents are located in AWS? And we can search through any document, no matter where it's loaded from, once it's inside of Webviewer here. So once we're actually viewing a file within Webviewer, then we have the ability to search comments on it. If these are documents that are sitting in the back end that maybe you want to programmatically search, or maybe if you'd like to extract the text from those documents to do something like build up a full text index, that's something that you can use our native toolkits to do. So PDFTron SDK, for Windows or Linux, you could leverage these to extract the text from a document and populate a full text search index, or handle searching however you'd like. There was another question, do you have any storing structure to let search documents not only into the document? So essentially our storage structure is PDF. So what we're doing is using PDFTron SDK, we can load up a PDF document by reading its bytes, and then from that extract text out of it. And that text can be extracted as just raw text, or our samples show ways to extract that as XML. And you could easily modify that to support other text formats like CSV or JSON. Another question was, can Webviewer replace Flipbook PDF viewers? And actually, Webviewer certainly can. So Webviewer's UI is quite customizable. We have high-level APIs for customizing what you can see in the viewer here. So we have buttons for doing things like toggling off download or print or text selection. And you can do things like remove these overlays very easily, or just sort of slim down the UI to make it a little easier for end users to use. So that's one way we have of customizing Webviewer's UI. If those APIs that I'm pointing out here, these things like disabling elements or set theme, if these APIs are somehow too limited for the customizations you need to do, we also have our full UI source code posted to GitHub. So that means you can go in and fork the UI and change around anything about this viewer to look however you'd like. So that's a very powerful mechanism for tailoring what Webviewer looks like and maybe moving away from this default interface to something that your users are maybe more accustomed to. And then a third option, and getting back to the question at hand, a third option for customizing the UI is to take an existing user interface and leveraging Webviewer within that. So here what we've done in this sample, this is actually a Flipbook sample that we got from GitHub. So it's just one that's, whose source code is freely available. So we leverage that inside of these samples. And what we're doing is we're showing that Flipbook UI, but with Webviewer's rendering actually going on underneath here. So the pages here that we're seeing rendered within this sort of Flipbook interface are being generated by Webviewer here within the client-side browser. Just as with our other rendering, Webviewer is downloading the bytes of the PDF, and then in this case, converting that into an image that can be shown in this Flipbook UI. So that means that if you have users who are very accustomed to a user interface like this, you can just leverage Webviewer inside of that kind of user interface. And so you get the advantages of using Webviewer, meaning with scalability, you're not having to rely on server-side rendering, and also the accuracy as well, because we've built up our rendering over the past couple of decades. So it's very robust rendering that can accurately render PDFs in the wild with very high fidelity. So you can take advantage of all of that without users really even noticing that anything has changed. So it's a very powerful sort of mechanism for getting up and running with Webviewer in your environment without disturbing users in the process. So let's see. So Webviewer does disallow downloading of files if you wish to customize the UI for that kind of functionality. So what we can do is remove download, print, and text selection from the UI. So that way, the buttons aren't available for users to press and simply download the document. And additionally, we have a variety of other ways for kind of locking down content within Webviewer. So one of those is that we do support a PDF feature called linearization. And linearization is part of what allows us to download very large documents in the browser in a performant way, and one that keeps a very constant memory footprint. So that linearization basically means that what we're doing is streaming the document down, much the way that one would stream a video. So with a video, say hosted on something like YouTube, the bytes are organized in a frame-by-frame way. So on disk, all the bytes for the first frame are grouped together, and then for the second frame and the third frame, all the way throughout the video. And so that way, a web server can stream frame by frame content down to the browser. And the browser can then show a frame and then discard it from memory after it's done. And the same is true with documents that have been linearized and are shown in Webviewer. Essentially, linearization organizes the bytes of a file page by page, so that way we can show the content of the first page after downloading just those bytes, and then move on to the second page and the third page, and so on. And another advantage of that is that the bytes aren't downloaded as one contiguous blob. So that way, if a user were doing something like tracing through the network, they wouldn't have just one contiguous set of bytes to download. Rather, since these are coming down in chunks and asynchronously, it's a much bigger challenge for users to be able to go through and actually grab that content. And additionally, we have support for other security features, such as the support of encryption and passwords with documents. One technique for locking down the content further might be to encrypt documents with a randomly generated password server-side, and then send that down to the client-side browser through a secure channel like secure WebSockets or an HTTPS call. And that way, the browser can actually apply the password to the document without the user even noticing that happened. So, without any sort of dialog box coming up or anything, programmatically that password can be applied to the password protected PDF, and then the user can see that content, but wouldn't actually have the password needed to open the file. So that's another way that we can kind of lock down content here within the viewer. And then we have some other techniques as well. One of them is our support for watermarks. So if you do have protected content here that you're showing in the browser, you can do things like add, say, a username as a watermark over the content, or other identifying information. Like here we have a timestamp, but this could also be something like an IP address or geolocation data, or whatever information might be useful for identifying a given user. And that way, even if the user does something like takes a screenshot of this content and then maybe runs it through an OCR engine, or does something, maybe even like snaps a photo of the screen with the camera in a mobile device, that's not something that programmatically we're able to stop. But by having a watermark over that content, at least you have some idea of who actually leaked that content from your site. So that's another way of kind of helping to make the content a bit more secure. And then, when it comes to other things within the user interface, we have APIs for disabling various buttons and things like text selection. And if there is anything else that you'd like to customize within VUI, again, I would remind you that we do have the full source code posted to GitHub. So if there is anything in terms of, say, key shortcuts or things like that, in order to prevent those. If there's anything within the Webviewer UI JavaScript that can be done to lock that down, then you'd be able to take that and modify that and ensure that step is taking place. Now, we do have the capability for OCR as well, getting back to graphical content. That was a question somebody brought up. What we have is server-side OCR capability. So that way, if you're given an image, or if you have an image-based PDF document, maybe something that was made from a scan or a fax, then what you can do is leverage our server-side capability for running OCR on that document, and then that can return a searchable document back. So here, for example, we just have a scanned image of a file, and if we click on OCR, what it's doing is it's actually taking this content and in a server-side component of ours, it's running this OCR on this image, and then what it's going to do is return to us a PDF that has that image underneath, and then laid over that searchable, selectable text, so that we'll be able to go in and even though it looks exactly the same, now we actually have searchable text that we can go in and select and do things like make annotations on top of, and so that leads us to having a user interface that's very similar to a document that was born digital. And in addition to that, as we saw with the form builder UI that will be included by default in the next release, that would enable you to create fillable form fields on this page as well. So not just adding text back in, but also making the document fillable in the kinds of form-based experiences that users are used to. So it's a very powerful way for kind of resurrecting this document back from just a fax document into kind of a more usable PDF again. And that OCR that we have, in terms of pattern matching, it can do, it does support our search mechanisms. So if you wanted to use regular expression searching with a document that's been OCR'd, that's absolutely supported, just as with any PDF document that has searchable text over it. Someone was asking if there's a way to do automatically add signature fields, perhaps based on a tag or a field in the native file when opening a docx or other native Office format. If there is some sort of placeholder within the document that Webviewer can go in and examine, then we would likely be able to automatically add a search field there. It sort of depends on what the actual document is like. So if there is particular text that maybe we could add a search field next to or underneath, then that can be one way of automatically adding signature fields back in. The kind of two-stage approach that we have for building forms is very useful in that sense. So, you know, with our form building demo here, what we see is that we have kind of two stages to adding signatures onto the document. So the first stage is really just adding an annotation onto the document without having turned this into a true PDF form field. And this behaves just like any of our other annotations. So you could actually have a whole review and approval workflow based around where users think a new form field might be added. And this could be something where you have a server-side process in conjunction with a client-side process. So you could have a server-side process using PDFTron SDK that searches for text and adds in annotations like these, showing where potentially a form field might go on this document. And then you could have users come in and take a look at those annotations, and based on their human review of the document, actually choose whether to go in and turn that into an actual fillable form field, just by clicking, turn into an actual field. And then afterwards, you have a signature field that's positioned exactly as users expect, one that a human being has had a chance to review. That's very similar also to another workflow that Webviewer is quite suited for, and that's redaction. So within a redaction process, there's a very similar kind of two-stage process. So what we can do is add redaction kind of candidate areas on top of the document. So these are again annotations that I've just made on top of the file, and that the users can come in and say, should we redact here? And then if someone else comes in and says, yes, maybe approved or accepted, then based on that, we could go in and actually truly apply that redaction into the document. So going through and actually burning in this redaction onto the file after people have had a chance to review that content. And this is quite a powerful workflow because it gives you a bit of a chance to kind of two-stage the redaction. So in the back end through say like PDFTron SDK, we could use text searching or other kinds of analysis to see where to potentially add a redaction. And then here in the browser, we can have users go through an approval process where they say, yes or no for each of these redaction areas, or maybe expand out the amount of text that should be redacted so that personally identifying or confidential or sensitive information is totally removed from the document. And PDFTron's redaction is actually pretty unique when it comes to redaction solutions in browser. We have taken care to make sure that we fully eradicate the content from underneath the redaction area. So this is a bit different than a lot of other solutions, which might do something like just overlay a black rectangle over the page. That's actually quite an insecure solution because that leaves that unredacted content inside of the existing file, so someone can actually go in and recover that very easily. You could actually use, for example, a very slow PDF rendering engine to see some of that content because you'll often see the unredacted content and then the redaction rectangle back over it if people are using sort of those less powerful redaction engines. But that's not the case with our redaction. Rather, we go through and we make sure that content is fully removed from underneath the redaction area. So some other ways of kind of avoiding doing true redaction, one method is to just turn the whole PDF page into a big image and then black out the pixels, underneath this area, say, and that approach will actually, truly remove that content from that image. But the downside is that now the rest of the content is also just stored as a large image as well. So that means that you lose things like the searchability of content, the ability to select text and make markups on top of text. All of that is lost if we just convert to a big image. But with PDFTron, since we're not doing that, we will actually leave the remaining content as true PDF content, so the text stays as text, and if you have, say, accessibility information inside of the document, that's retained as well. So the end result is that we're left with a document that's exactly the same as it was before, just with the offending content now totally removed. And all of this can happen entirely inside of the client-side browser as well. So that really helps with workflows that maybe require a bit more security, like, say, end-to-end encryption. So you could send this document down to the browser in encrypted format, decrypt it here in browser, so it's not in transit at that point. You would be sort of at an endpoint again where you could decrypt it, and then we could apply the redaction here inside of the client-side browser, and then if we wanted to disseminate that to the world, we could send out that redacted copy rather than allow the unredacted copy to go through transit unencrypted. So it's quite a powerful mechanism, and the fact that we're doing all of this processing within the client-side browser really adds a very useful layer of security in terms of keeping content confidential. So someone was asking whether redaction also removes the resources used by the redacted content, so images, fonts, or characters in fonts. So it does not remove embedded fonts by default, simply because those characters could be used outside of the redacted area. That said, our toolkit does give you low-level access to the PDF itself. And so if you did want to remove embedded fonts from the document, that's something that would be quite possible using our toolkit. But that's not something that redaction necessarily does by default, because font information typically does not constitute personally identifying information. It does support redaction of images. So, for example, if there's image content under which I'm drawing a redaction rectangle, then what our toolkit will do is extract out that image content, black out those pixels of the image, and then put that back into the document. So that way, if there is image content under where you're redacting, that's removed as well. Someone was asking, when we're converting a docx to a PDF, does the result have differences, spacing, text justification, and so on? So our docx to PDF, our docx to PDF conversion is code that we've actually written ourselves in-house from the ground up. So if there are any sort of formatting issues that you do happen to run across, those are things that we can actually support ourselves. So if you get in touch with our support department, we'd be able to investigate further and see maybe what the underlying issue is. And that's something that you can do here from our web page. If you go to support up here and then go to resources, we actually have quite a few different ways of getting in touch with us. Probably this free trial tech support is the most useful one if you're just evaluating our toolkit for the first time. That one actually goes to myself and my team, and we'd be happy to help you out with any issues that you came across when evaluating our toolkit. If you've already licensed PDFTron, then our tech support form is here, where you can go in and list out any issues you might be seeing. We also have forms if you'd like to request a feature maybe that we don't already provide. So if there's some new bit of functionality that you think would be great for PDFTron to offer, we'd love to hear it. And additionally, if you need any help with integrating or developing or customizing our solution, we do offer professional services and consulting. So you could get in touch with us and see about maybe leveraging some of our in-house expertise when it comes to documents and just using our toolkit in general. So we'd love to hear if you have any questions along those lines. You can just reach out to us directly from those. Another question was, does the Office to PDF conversion create hyperlinks and bookmarks from headings? So I'm not entirely sure offhand, but you can certainly test that out within our toolkit, either by uploading those to our Webviewer demo or by downloading the toolkit and converting those yourself. If that's functionality that's important to you. So judging by the poll here, I think the only area that I haven't really touched on that people are curious to know more about is PDF manipulation. So in addition to kind of the editing that I was talking about throughout this, we also have the ability to manipulate PDFs here in the browser. So since we actually have the bytes of the PDF downloaded into the browser's memory here, and since we have JavaScript code that's built from our native toolkit that covers a wide variety of PDF manipulation, that means that we can do a lot of editing here in browser. And so Redaction is actually a really good example of that. But we have other kinds of manipulation that we can do here in browser too. So just at a very basic level, we can do things like page manipulation, so rotating pages or deleting certain pages from a document. And then when downloading the file, that's actually burned into the document itself, and we're actually modifying the PDF document itself here when we're doing these kinds of manipulations. We can also do things like merge different documents together. So, for example, here in this demo, over here, what we can do is, what we're doing is bringing up two different Webviewer instances, and we can actually drag and drop pages between them. So, for example, if you had the need for users to be able to assemble new documents out of existing ones, you could have this kind of UI where users bring up different documents, maybe from a catalog of different files, and then drag the pages they're looking for into a new document, and then be able to simply save that into a file. But again, in addition to that, we also have a lot of very low-level operations that we can do on the PDF. We actually, if you're familiar with how PDF is structured, so the portable document format, or PDF, is built on an earlier format called SDF, or the structured document format. And we have APIs for accessing the structured document format portions of the PDF. That's essentially how a PDF looks at a low level, is as a kind of structured document format, much the same way that an XML document is always a text file as well. So we can actually manipulate the PDF at the SDF level here inside of the browser. So if there's anything inside of our APIs that's limiting, or some part of the PDF document that you find you need to get to that for some reason our high-level APIs don't give you access to, this low-level SDF API lets you access absolutely everything about the PDF document and make sure that you can control that however you'd like. So if that's something low-level inside of the metadata of the file, or however you're looking to manipulate a PDF document, you can always get to the low-level bytes of the document and modify that directly here inside of the browser, and then persist that by saving the document off. So, oh, and someone was asking for the document template example, are there variable tags that might be longer in length, and will they wrap properly and retain the Word document's formatting? And that's exactly correct. That's really a lot of the advantage of using this new template functionality based around docx that will be in the next version. That's one big advantage of that approach. Since we're not just working in PDF, it's much easier to replace text and to ensure that it retains the same formatting and that it doesn't do something like go off the end of the page the way that directly editing PDF documents can do. And as we saw before, Webviewer supports both public and private note sharing, essentially. The way you can do that is by controlling who has access to the XFDF, the XML content that encodes the annotations. So just getting back to that diagram. So again, the question is about whether it's possible to hide certain annotations from certain users. And probably the easiest way of doing that is by controlling this XFDF file. So if you isolate all of your annotations and form field information here within this XML copy, then what you can do is control which users are able to access this XML. So by controlling which annotations are actually sent down to Webviewer, you can control who sees what in terms of annotations or form field information. And that makes it possible to essentially take one PDF document and share that among different groups of people. Like, for example, we've had customers who enable students to work in groups in a classroom setting, where they can all see each other's annotations, but not see the annotations of any other groups. And this mechanism is exactly how that's possible, because then you can control which groups see which XFDF and therefore which other annotations. So it's entirely under your control how to leverage that capability to secure the content and keep it from being seen by those who shouldn't see it, while still enabling those who should see it to view it and so on. So I think that gets us to the top of the hour. If there are any questions that we didn't address, then please let us know. Feel free to write into PDFTron through our support channel, or I believe Nick might have more information about that after the webinar. But thanks so much for attending today. Definitely appreciate all the questions, and once again, please do feel free to download Webviewer and try it out within your environment, and let us know any feedback you might have. Thanks so much.